David, over to you. Take us through how we can transform our instructor-led activities into e-learning interactions. David.
All right, thanks so much, Donald, and thank you. There's a lot of folks in here. I'm trying to watch everyone going through, and I realize there's a lot of people I know. So if you want to say hi, that's really great. But I'm glad to know most people are experiencing some fairly good weather today. So in this session, we've done variations on this. Today, we're really focusing on storyline specifically. I realize that at least from what we see, a lot of folks from either higher ed or even K through 8 or just former teachers are moving to e-learning. I know that we work with them a lot in the community. So if there's something in this session that you didn't get because maybe you wanted to do it in Rise or you're just trying to do something more general, I have some contact info. Hit me up or post it in the chat. Ginger from the team is here. And Donald's team is also helping. We'll get you those resources. It's only an hour. It's a lot to do. I do have a takeaway that you can have after the session. Has some recorded videos just in case I go too fast or we skip something or we don't hit something as well as you'd like. But I do want to make sure that you're spending time with us. You came here. We want to make sure you get the value from the session, our tools, what we're trying to share here today. So make sure you ask that, and even if we don't get it directly answered in the question, we will get it answered in after the session. So that's my commitment to you on that. Put the readers on, can't see without them. I am experiencing a lot of lag, so I'm probably going to have to shut the camera off a couple times while I'm jumping back and forth between the tools. This is me. If you want to contact me, you can text me, you can message me, or connect on LinkedIn, wherever you like. Obviously in eLearning Heroes, where I work, that's our community. We'll look at that in just a couple of moments. So feel free to contact me however you like. And that was the wrong button, so we'll put that back in full screen, and then we're going to get in here. So real quick, before we jump into storyline, I like framing this like this because I think a lot of times when you're brand new to e-learning, or if you haven't done e-learning, but you are used to teaching, so you have this background in education or instruction, or you're a content expert, it can seem a little overwhelming, especially when you listen to the pros. You listen to the people that Donald features and those webinars, or the people that we highlight sometimes. You're always kind of looking at folks a lot of times who are farther along in the career, and so their work seems to be a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional. But the one thing to keep in mind is everyone kind of follows somewhat of a similar path. And I like the way that we frame this in terms of sort of this 3-step process for when you don't have anything online, you have this background in education, but you haven't put anything, you haven't built courses or built training that's digital or e-learning. First thing we like to look at is your goal is just to get it online, because that's a win, right? If all you have are classroom activities, all you have are what you've done in workshops or in as a facilitator, and you don't have anything online, your first goal is just to get online. Don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about what people say about too much text or too many bullet points. I mean, that's like a milestone. Get it online. Then after you've got it online, or you've got it in your LMS and it's been published, then you're going to start thinking about, well, either you're going to think about it, or someone close to you or above you in your company is going to say, you got to start making that look a little bit better, right? And so after we get our content in, we're going to work with PowerPoint, but it could be any kind of source material. Start making it look good. How do I enhance this, right? I've got all this text. These are facilitation notes, PowerPoints. I want to make it look a certain way. And so we'll look at ways that we can use basic multimedia principles to enhance it, adding audio, adding video, adding some basic animations for progressive reveals. And then finally, after that's kind of worn its course, you're going to start wanting to make it interactive. And that's really where I'd say where you ultimately want to be, but we kind of like to mention that courses don't always have to be interactive. So there's always the focus on interactivity, but maybe it's just an info-based course and it doesn't really have to be interactive. But we'll look at how we take that static content and start converting it, and how we use real-world inspiration or real-world examples and then make those interactive. All right, with that, put the readers on. I'm going to shut off the camera because I'm going to be bouncing back between software share. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but I'm going to trust that Donald will interrupt if there's any good questions that we should address. So with that, Let's
I'm
pause
flying on
that.
I'm flying on your wing, David, monitoring the chat. Please keep your thoughts and coming in the chat, and any questions, drop them into that box just underneath the window, and we'll make sure that we either get them to David immediately or at the end, or we'll pass on to him afterwards if we can't manage them all. David, back to you.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. All right. So we're gonna breeze through this first part because I really want to get into the meat, and that's the second two stages. But how to get your content into Storyline. Now, Storyline is different than Rise. There's two different tools, and we do this session for Rise. Rise is a little bit different, but Storyline has the advantage here of being able to import your PowerPoint slides, your PowerPoint content. And you think about typical types of content that you're going to use in a classroom. PowerPoint's a big part of it. It could be job aids, it could be Google Docs, it could be Word docs, but in a PowerPoint format, we can import that directly into Storyline and immediately begin working from those existing documents. But other types of content you may have could be videos, right? You could be working with videos in PowerPoint. The videos could be part of your handheld or mobile phone-based recordings, but you have videos that you're using to support. I used to work in automotive training, so we used a lot of instructors were all geared with mobile phones and small cameras to film part of the process. So videos were big. Videos from a webcam. Not everyone wants to get on camera, but sometimes that expert's authenticity and experience is far more valuable than having someone who's super polished on camera. So never underestimate the power of getting with your content expert and working with webcam. And of course, things like YouTube and external videos that are hosted. Also, don't want to include webinar recordings. And the reason I do is a lot of our content is webinar, and you might think, well, that's not really e-learning. I want to work at Storyline. I want to build something. I want to make it interactive. Well, webinar content can be exported as an MP4, and right there, you now have a video that you can use in your course, and you could even take it a step farther and making it interactive. And then we'll look at how you can quickly record a presentation. So that's our first part. Want to show you something, what we're going to start with here from the content perspective and what that looks like. And that is what your format looks like in an ILT type project can be different in a lot of ways. So if I'm looking at a classroom, and this is a reworked version of something that I used many years ago in a bank, you might have text and there might be some nice designs, but essentially the facilitator is leading the show. Now, what you'll notice down here on the bottom is I don't have notes here. So when I used to facilitate, and my background is not facilitation, I started in e-learning and then went back to facilitation. But the way we did it at the bank was we didn't work in the notes panel. We worked in we worked in the notes page. And so all of our notes were set up from a facilitator perspective because these helped go in the workbook. So we'd explain a topic and then we'd discuss topics. And so these are the notes and the guides for the facilitator to lead the class. This is the slide with the objectives. When I see this or anything form of this, whether it's a video recording of a class or something like this is brilliant. You essentially have so much of what you need to begin creating your course. Because if you just had the bullet points on the slide, you need context around that. That's where the struggle is sometimes if you don't have that. But if this class has been facilitated, you're going to have notes either in printed form or you're going to have them from videos that you could record of your instructor. And from that's like half the battle right there. So you have something that you can work with. So this is the format. And the idea is we want to take some of these slides, some of these content examples, things that we would ask or discuss or explain as classroom activities. And what does that look like as we start to make them e-learning activities or e-learning content? Because not everything has to be an activity. It could just be practice. I'd also like to know, while I'm switching over here, how many who are have classroom experience, what types of format you use for presenting. How did you keep on track with the notes? Maybe you just had it all up in your head, or did you use a workbook, a leader guide, or something similar with the notes page? I absolutely love the notes pages. But the reason I called attention to the notes is in Storyline, if you have text here in the notes, this also comes into Storyline. If you're using the notes panel page that I just showed, we don't read that. So then you might have, a little pizza party where you can copy all the text one day and everyone just starts copying the text from in here into your notes panel here. So notes panel, notes page, similar titles, but just a little bit different. So I do see Harmony's mentioned and how Stacy works with the PowerPoint slide. Yeah, so the notes section is probably the more common one. But I like when we think about the format of a classroom, of a facilitator: explain, discuss, show, ask, right? Those are prompts that you're using to interact and engage with your learners. It's very similar type pulling effect that we can do in e-learning. So I'm going to close out of this, and to make things a little bit quicker, I'm going to show you how to import it, and then I'm just going to start with one that's already been imported. The reason being is it could take a couple of minutes, and it's not, there's nothing really cool to see. It's just a spinning logo. But you just go to PowerPoint, and then you're going to find your PowerPoint, and from here, Storyline's going to look at all the slides. The best thing to keep in mind here, besides the fact that everything's going to be editable, not edible, editable, is that the themes, the designs, the fonts, the colors, the layouts that you use, your branding, all gets recognized when you bring it into Storyline. So that's huge, because now you don't have to go and recreate everything from scratch. And when folks were first getting started in Storyline, this is how most courses were built. Okay, so I'm not going to import it, but I was hoping just to show you what it was going to look like. It's a very large PowerPoint, but essentially we're going to see all the slides, and we could choose one or more that we could look at, right? So everything is in here. The designs, it's all going to be recognized. I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to do a jump cut, kind of like in the shows where they move forward a few minutes or days. And here's the PowerPoint that we'll work with. Okay, jump cut, and Storyline is popping open. So first step, we want to get it online. After you've imported your PowerPoint, we're just going to focus on this first scene right here. So we're in scenes. If you're brand new to Storyline, I'm going to assume you have some basic understanding. If not, just ask in the chat. Ginger will be more than happy to send you some links on getting started. But when we import that PowerPoint, it comes in as a linear presentation. Okay, so I'm not claiming this is e-learning. Don't tweet that and says David says PowerPoint straight up is e-learning. But it's digital learning in the sense that it can be published to your LMS. We could add a quiz to the end, right? After we've completed the course, we could go to quiz, grab a graded question, and we could drop something in, whether it's a default looking question, or we could grab one from content library. We can add a quiz that can be tracked. That's a win, right? So you got something online that took nothing, right? Not saying that it's the world's best e-learning, not even saying that it's the world's average e-learning, but just getting that into your LMS and published is something more than probably, if you didn't have anything, it's a lot more than what you just had, right? So you would have that. Now, the one thing to keep in mind here, I always have to call attention to this, because it happens when you import PowerPoint. The way PowerPoint triggers work is they like to jump to the next slide automatically. So what you want to look for is making sure that the slide advances by user and not automatically. But you have a course that can be published. You can track it with SCORM, AICC, XAPI in your LMS, and you can then record that the learners have taken it. All right, that's step one. That is just getting it into the course. All right, so what else can we do? Well, after we've imported the course, right, we have the slides. There's other ways to bring in additional content. We do a lot at Articulate of using GoToWebinar and Zoom. Now, those are 1 hour videos or live classes that we do, and then we make a recording so you can watch it later. Every one of those MP4s, or those videos, can be saved locally and then imported into Storyline. Now, if you want to start making those more interactive, right, you can start bringing in the additional buttons and videos. I should be seeing videos here. I need to go find my videos. Videos for creating more interactive videos. But if I imported that MP4, it's going to add right here directly to my slide. So that's another way that I can reuse existing classroom material. All right. This is another idea, and this is probably really a good way for a lot of, I'd say, facilitators and teachers are comfortable using tools like Camtasia screen recording. If I needed to quickly convert a PowerPoint, or I needed some help from my content experts who did not have really great notes in their panel, what I might do with them is open up an instance of Storyline, hit up slides, record screen, and watch them draw a selection around the presentation and let them walk through using audio their presentation, right? So I could, once it starts recording, I have to resize it a little bit just so you see it, but you get the idea, hopefully, that presentation, all right, fundamentals of virtual team expert, take me through your presentation. And Storyline's capturing the audio, Storyline's capturing the video, and then when I click done, I can now insert that into my presentation. Don't underestimate that. I know it feels a little low tech. It feels maybe not like what you'd want to do, but if you're trying to get something online quickly, that is a fantastic option. Or for helping the instructor pull that notes out. It's harder sometimes for someone to write down their knowledge than it is for them letting them speak it or present it, right? That's their element. That's where they shine. That's where they'll be. So pull that from them using a screen recording. Obviously, you can do a lot more afterwards. All right, let's start looking at adding the multimedia, and then we're going to start making it look good. So these slides right here have all been added from the notes. The notes had to be tight, had to be copied in because I used the notes in the notes page. But this is what the slide looked like when it came in. Okay, this is something, but what can I do to start adding audio and making this a little bit more engaging? Now, I also realize I haven't seen the chat, but I'm also afraid to cringe because I know how course creators often think about audio, right? You either love audio, you don't like audio, you like background audio, you don't, you like narration, you don't, you like ambient audio, you like sound effects, natural sounds, any of that. You may or may not like it. That's okay. Used appropriately, audio is one of the best ways to set a scene or context of a slide. And it's also a way to bring in the voice of the experts. So we have a couple of options for audio. I'm going to treat this slides, this in the notes panel here as my script, right? So I might just, without adding a lot of extra writing to this and editing, I can add audio directly here, record my mic in Storyline, and begin narrating at the slide level my audio for these notes. Now, if they have external programs that they're comfortable in, that's totally fine, right? I can say virtual team members divide their meetings into the following. You have information sharing meetings, and those are where participants discuss information that can impact the team's decision-making process. You have discussion-based, and so on. And then I can click save, and that audio clip is now available on my timeline, and I've got a recording of that. Now, I think my levels sound good because I tested them with Donald, but that level doesn't look very good right there. So I'd want to investigate. So don't think that's a really great level. But I just narrated a slideshow. I'm not an e-learning person. I clicked a button and now I have audio on my slide, and I can begin adding audio to my slides. The next step after this, though, is to start thinking about how do you progressively reveal some of this information. So we did another jump cut. This is the previous recording of the audio, a little bit louder, I believe, but I have the same slide. Well, Storyline, like PowerPoint and a lot of tools, allows you to add simple animations where you can progressively reveal content one by one or as many as you like. So for example, we have this text. I need to listen to the audio down here. And as I play this, and I don't believe you'll hear it because it's going to come through my headphones. But when I play it, I'm going to look for little places where I can add markers that I can adjust where the audio should appear, when each of these bullets should appear. So I'm going to play it. You can kind of see the breaks in the audio, so you should kind of hear that where it's going. All right, here's a pro tip, and I don't share this with everyone, especially since this is a free session. I'd usually want to charge for this, but if you want to hear the audio out of your computer, turn on the volume. I find that is amazing. So turn the audio on. Pro tip. Let's try it again. Okay, so I know you don't hear that, but the markers tell me where each one of these pieces of content should come in. And so now I can add a quick animation to them. I can just keep it simple, a fade. And if you don't know this, this is a fantastic way to work smart and quickly. I don't have to have everything fade in at once. I can actually do it by paragraph. Doing something like that allows me then to take each line of text and then drag it to the marker. And so by doing that, I can then control the progressive build of my slide, which means that as the audio is playing, and I can scrub up. I got them out of order. Good grief. So, by the way, um, if you haven't updated your storyline, did you just notice what I was able to do right there? I'll show it again. I want to see if Ginger, see if anyone noticed what just happened. So as I drag my cursor, notice how the slide is building. Oh yeah, we have scrubbable timelines now. That's pretty cool. I think that's really cool. But now I can at least synchronize my audio and my on-slide objects. Now I'm just working with text again, right? We still want to we want to start in places that make it easy for us to get wins, and then we can build upon that. Looking at the chat, yes, Julia, Wesley. There's a lot of people in here. I can't keep up. But yeah, Cecilia, huge time saver. Long time waited for that one, but boy, we can celebrate that every day. Anyway, so there's some simple syncing animations. What else can we do? I mentioned the webcam. Webcam is another way that you can just begin narrating and creating a little bit more personalization. Again, our content is already here. We've already added it. Why not add or let the expert, or you as the instructional designer, teacher, course designer, you can begin adding the record the webcam. And with that, guess what? You can narrate what you're reading on the slide. I think this is, oh, should I settings, studio display. Um, I did not read the new features for the new phones. Evidently, you can now use your phone as a webcam. I mean, I should have probably read that, but I hadn't upgraded in a while, and that's pretty darn neat that you can do that. I wonder if it would work. Interesting. So we have our audio here, our video, right? And it's not coming through. Okay, so it's probably the webinar. It's not getting the signal from my studio display, but you'd record it, and from there you'd insert it, and it's going to be an MP4 on the slide, just like we had with the previous with the audio. So you'd have the audio that you could then synchronize additional text to. So webcam recording. I do the weekly challenges. If you know the weekly challenges, let me know. You just put hashtag ELH challenge. Whenever I travel, especially if I'm going to the UK or if somewhere far away where it's going to be hard to update the challenges, I love doing the webcam challenge because normally we get 30 entries and the webcam challenge will get like 6. I get that people don't like being on camera, but when there's an expert on camera, no one cares how goofy they are or how maybe uncomfortable or awkward. They like the content. They like the authenticity. Try to emphasize that with your subject matter experts because they are the folks who live the content and they can do a fantastic job. Just tell them no one will see it. And then of course it'll be assigned as a mandatory training course and everyone will have to watch it. All right, let's start talking and getting into the good stuff. And that's graphics, right? So evidently, what we're trying to do ultimately, Richard Mayer obviously has written a lot about this, multimedia principle, adding graphics to your course to improve learning. You want those visuals to help show the relationship between concepts. We imported a facilitator slide deck. That's not so easy to all of a sudden have visuals. A lot of those slide decks are meant because they're guides for the discussion and the activities that you're doing in the class. However, when you add the visuals and you go through the content, you can start finding ways to quickly add simple visuals. And again, don't look at the showcase pieces. Don't look at the top designers' portfolio pieces because you're going to think, oh, that's pro. Well, here's another secret. And this is true for me. It's true for Ginger, true for Donald. Professionals, people who've been doing it, don't put their worst work on their website. They put their best work. So if you compare what you're doing to someone's website or portfolio or what you see that won the DevLearn Demo Fest Award, you're comparing two different types of projects. Everyone's built things that no one wants to see or show. And so when you're thinking about this, don't compare to those showcase pieces. I can't emphasize that enough because I know that working in the challenges, I hear that. Simple visuals, right? We have these titles: information sharing, discussion, decision, product. I just type these terms in, right? If you have Storyline 360, which means you have an active subscription, hello, icons right under here under insert, you have access to an entire library, information sharing. So it's been a while since I pulled those icons down, but we'll see what comes up. This is a perfect, there we go. So there's some great ones already. type in the titles, right? Forget about trying to parse all the content, the verbs and the nouns and all the action items in the descriptions. Add your titles. See what you can find in there as a place to begin. So at a minimum, five minutes of searching content library, I went from information sharing text with notes to, oh, I've got an icon that now represents what each of these types of titles is. I would challenge you right now that if you went back into a couple of your more text-based or text-heavy courses, even if you've been designing, not everyone's just coming in here from classroom today, but go find some text-heavy courses and just type in your titles. Virtual teams, right? Fundamentals, virtual teams, type in the chapter headings and see what comes up in the icons and see if you can't start to use those as visuals that will replace some of the terms, or after you've introduced the term, use those icons and those visuals to then represent going forward. That could really help balance your work with more supporting graphics. And then, right, what are you going to start looking at? Maybe there's things you can do to start removing some of that content. So maybe each piece of these becomes a really simple interaction, right? Just a show later trigger, for example, where upon clicking, you can show that. What are we doing here? Are we just making a silly click and reveal and that's e-learning? Well, I guess you could frame it that way, but I would frame it this way. For the first time since we converted our PowerPoint, our classroom materials to e-learning, we've actually created the first time we've turned control over to our learner. We're not the ones directing the entire course. Learners are directing the course now because they can pull the information at their own pace. They can revisit it, right? They can control what they see and when they see it. So there's your first level of interactivity and personalization by turning over just a little bit of control. We're not turning over the whole course to them, right? But we're giving them a little bit more that they can work with. So, oh my goodness, Julia, you didn't even know about the icons? Oh my, the session just, you got it. You're paying for it. Use it. Sorry. I know there's always something you just find out. I can tell you that happens even to us sometimes internally. So there you are. If you don't know how this is set up, you'll have the source file. You can deconstruct it, but this is sort of something you'd learn in Storyline in the first day with the actions, which is their triggers. And then they are showing slide layers above the content. So slide layers are just layers that reside above it. Oh, well, anyway, enjoy those icons. I can't tell you how much I use and rely on the icons. So a simple click and reveal working with basic graphics and visuals. All right. I have to switch to PowerPoint, which means I probably can come back to the camera for a moment. And we already did this one, and we kind of jumped through that first one and the second one. And now we're looking at, okay, what's funny is I didn't touch anything, but everything's clearly shifted. So let's try moving that over. Or now we'll look at converting it from static to interactive. This is really the fun part. This is where those real world activities you do in the classroom now can be converted and recreated, at least the essence of them, to e-learning. So if you don't know, in Storyline, we have something called Freeform interactions. With those, you can print out pretty much anything. This Freeform interactions cover a lot of ground, and then combined with any advanced or additional triggers and conditions, sky's the limit. What we'll do is we'll look at some ways that we would, some common activities in the class, everything from maybe conversations or discussions, ways to have them explore type activities, and what those will look like using Storyline's built-in Freeform. So built-in means something, but really you're kind of creating it from scratch. That's ahead of me. We're not finished. I have more. So that's where we'll go and look at how we can use those interactions to start building common interactions in Storyline. So I'm going to turn off the camera again. I feel it like I thought I'd moved ahead. This is something we do as a weekly challenge. If you see this, drop the link in here. If you want to practice e-learning, this is a fantastic way to practice e-learning. You can do it in Storyline, you can do it in Rise, you can do it in any other tool you're doing, any technology, and that is to build the same piece of content multiple ways. When you build something multiple ways, first off, you're getting familiar with the content. Excuse me. You're already familiar with the content, so you're not worrying about, is the content accurate? Is this been approved? If you have something that's already been approved, rebuild it in at least 3 different ways. Build a drag version, drag and drop version, build a hover version, build a click and reveal version. It's like cross-training for e-learning. And even if you know for a fact that that type of interaction is not going to be appropriate, if it's not the right type, it doesn't matter, right? I push a giant tire at CrossFit. That's not appropriate. I don't push tires in my day job, but I'll push a tire across the floor or pull it. Why? Because it makes me stronger in other areas, and that's what practicing by building those different ways will help. And so, don't worry about how right it is or how whether it's the right interaction. That's what you're looking for. So the way it's going to work is we're going. Thank you, Wesley. You have your slide. The idea is you don't want to delete the content. You're going to show the content, present it. So you've already presented it, and then you're going to duplicate it and then rework it. So you're going to tell, and then you're going to ask or have them do. But we don't necessarily want to just delete the content and then have them just do an activity. You want both, because perhaps this was the approved slide and the slide content. So we're going to duplicate the slide. So we have our source slide, especially if we're going to duplicate it several times. And then the second example, the first copy, second slide, first copy, will be the one that you use to convert to Freeform. And so we're still under the Insert tab on the ribbon, and this is convert to Freeform. We've had this since day one in Storyline. This is when you see showcase pieces, when you see examples that we highlight or other users or companies highlight, most likely it was a Freeform interaction. Because what Freeform allows you to do is you can do it all from scratch. You can use any design. Anything can really be an interaction. So we would choose one of these, right? We could say pick one. It's like a multiple choice question. And we're taken to form view. So I said it's Freeform. What are we doing in form view? You're misleading. No, I'm not. This is how we select the choices. And slide view over here is how we view the layout. So we can do here whatever we want. So what we have is these 4 icons, and then we could say, let's say the question is, I'm going to copy that text because then I'm going to delete them all, but I have to copy it because I need to remember it. No, this is a shorter text. I'm going to copy this one. And so let's say the question is Control T, learn your shortcuts. Question, which type of meeting allows? Then I'm going to paste the text. I know it's probably not entirely grammatically correct, but the idea is I want a question here, and I'm going to delete these, and I'll bring these down. So I'm really not redesigning my slide. I'm just reworking it. So my question is here, and I want to ask what type of meeting allows participants to, and then there's the literal definition. So you format it more as you like. So, but the idea is you don't want to work too hard. If you're just practicing, you just want to see what it's going to look like. All right, so I have 4 icons, and let's say I come over here, or I could group these, right, and make them a single object. I'm just going to focus on the icon to keep it moving. I go to form view, and I need to select my choices. Now watch what happens. Now I like to name things. I like to keep things in order. I'm part of that zero kitchen counter, zero clutter counter person. I like no clutter. I know creative people are supposed to have clutter, but I can't do clutter. I like to name my files, but notice how if I didn't name my files, let's just pretend I didn't. Notice how the red highlights are coming over the objects over here on the side. So even both types, orderly and non-orderly, or clean and not clean, or file names properly or unnamed properly, can still see what you're working on. But I'll say, I'm just going to go through the 4 icons. I'll say decision making, discussion, and notice how each time I click one of these, it removes it from the list, right? No reason to have them selected twice. Now I've already forgotten which one because I'm talking and doing all this. So I'm just going to come back over here and it's decision making. Okay, I need to go back to form view. I should make a sticky note. And discussion is the correct choice. And we have a lot of ways to do feedback. There's just so many different ways you can approach this. I'm not going to go into all of that. I'm going to pop back into slide view and notice what happened here for the icons. Not here on the slide, but down here in the states, there's a little glow. Now, that may not be really evident in the webinar, so I could double click the states to edit it. Hopefully you know that you don't have to always click edit states. You can just double click it to edit it. That is a super fast way to edit. And then maybe I need to, make a different type of glow that's much brighter. or I just design it differently and I can change the way it looks. But essentially, storyline is helping you identify, the learner identify which object is selected. We could fill it. We could do a lot of things with it. And then I guess I should be consistent by format painting that to the others. But now if I preview the slide, I have a really simple, I would call this more of a knowledge check than a quiz, right? You can see how each one highlights. And I have a way to then test or check in with my learner to see, all right, I just told you the types of virtual meetings. Let's just see if you're paying attention. I'm not saying that this is, again, the most interactive, but it's a way that we can, okay, so I didn't look at it right. Maybe I did the wrong one, but it works. Logically, it works. I just chose the wrong choice. I chose the wrong option. But this is a way that you could start to reframe your content by taking a statement and then framing it in the form of a question. So what I would do then is I'd keep going through Convert to Freeform, and now I would duplicate this one and I would make a drag and drop, right? So maybe you don't have any labels here, and maybe you only have one of these, and I'm not going to build it here, but if you need to know how to build it, you can contact me and I will build it or help you learn to build it. And then maybe there's a little drop target down here that says, drag the correct label. And a dotted line. Okay, this is really unnecessary, David. Just move on, right? But we could then do a matching exercise. And we could set this up as a drag and drop. We would get to form view. Each one of these objects would be a drag object. This would be my target. And then we would ask the learner to drop those on there. And now you have another practice activity. Same thing with the text entry. Same thing with the multiple select. That's how you can start practicing e-learning. And that's how you can begin taking that static content and then making it even more interactive. I need to jump over this one. I don't know whether there's two of them. Let's start talking real quick, because we are coming down the home stretch, about the most common interactions. When I say common interactions, I mean not the interactions that just everyone uses because they don't have any other options. I'm saying because they are the best and most common and really appropriate for e-learning. A lot of what we do in e-learning, and probably there's one interaction that's probably next to tabs, it's like the most popular. It's a label graphic. You're identifying parts, right? So whether you're, I did automotive training. I used to work for a bank. We did remittance processing. We had to identify different parts of the loan process. There's a lot of identifying. There's a lot of understanding of those different stages, steps, or processes in a topic. Well, in this course, we had just how to create a designated workspace. There's like a dozen different ways we could do this. Could be a step graphic where we step through each scene. This could be a step-by-step, or it's just a bunch of general tips, which we have here, that are asking you to just consider on how to set up a workspace. Well, as a learner, I could read this, but that's not super helpful for me in visualizing it. Well, the best part about the label graphic is a single image drives your entire interaction. Just go grab an image. This is a flattened photograph from Content Library, and then you can work with markers. So what are we saying? We're saying eye level screen. I'm just going to copy that. But the label graphic, you can get a lot of mileage out of this, and you can work very quickly. This is available in Rise. It's something you see in Home Depot used to. I don't know if they still do it. They had this. Everything had a label graphic on it. Everything had a little marker, and then we have our different types of labels. The eye icon. I click once. I've got my heading, right? So there's my, okay, so I need to paste without formatting. There we go, paste without formatting. And well, whether it's centered or not, I can format it. I can add text, I can add videos, I can move this label around, and I can begin creating a simple interaction out of an image, interactive picture. We don't call it that, we call it label graphic. Interactive picture probably makes a little bit more sense, or interactive graphic. So if I turn this off and turn everything else back on in the one I just made, you can see how I customize those a little bit better. And we can begin creating labels. You can use this for FAQs, right? What are the FAQs on you could slow down, Dave. Frame each one of these as a question, right? What is lighting? What type of lights do we need? And then as you click on a light, it addresses the type. Maybe there's even a link that you could include that would link to the procurement or to the company employee store where they could order the appropriate lights. Maybe you want a new Mac, just click the link and order a new Mac from your team, and so on. But you can get a lot of mileage out of a single image because that image is what's driving the interaction, and you didn't even have to build the image. You're just putting markers, interactive buttons on top of it to create all of that interaction. Okay, so after label graphic, then we go to, so there's a lot of debates. I would be curious, if you think about what you've built, tabs or label graphic, where are you? It's like, well, here it'd be Republican, Democrat, or it could be Arial versus Helvetica. I want to know it. Tell me, let's get political. Label graphic or tabs interaction? Where do you stand? Because you're going to be on one side or the other, but you're probably using them both. There's always crossover. You always cross a reach across the aisle. But tabs or label graphic, where do you go? Tabs are fantastic because it kind of allow you to, and I think label graphics do it too, but tabs especially help the teacher or the instructor do what they do best in the classroom, and that is chunk the lessons, chunk the content, group it into smaller bite-sized pieces. It also gives control, like we saw earlier with the click and reveal, back to the learner, right? So you can create a smaller amount of information that's pulled individually with tabs rather than having to view it all at once. The benefit is that if you had made links to link out of each of these, we have to jump to a new slide or go somewhere else. That takes the learner away from the moment, right? They're in the context of the common challenges. And so what you want to do is, if you're going to provide additional info that they can pull, you still want to keep them in the context of where they are. Otherwise, they can lose their place and have to kind of reestablish what that initial context was when they return to the slide. Tabs do that. And also, tabs, for example, are probably the best way to learn storyline. I'll talk about that if you're interested. But essentially, we're looking at this. We know that in our notes channel, we've already got the definitions, whether that was because the slides had the notes or our instructor put a webcam and an audio microphone in front of them. An audio microphone, that's probably a microphone to record the audio. And then they gave us some context. So we took the context, we took that content, and we made simple buttons. And what does each of these buttons do? Well, let's look at our triggers. And we look over here on the triggers. We say side layer, show layer when user clicks, well, 1. And layer 1 is the definition that we pulled from the notes panel on the base layer. So if I preview this, you can see it. Tabs, I got to look at the chat. I don't see where you all are. Oh, there's a label graphic rocking it. Look at that. I don't know. We'll have to get a count before we finish. I want to know where this is. I want to know.
We had some early votes for team tab as well. So I think the votes
team tab. We're not okay. We don't want to. All right. I'm only looking at a sampling. I don't know what the plus or minus is here. So, anyway, thank you everyone for that, because these are places to start. And if they feel like they're really basic and you've done these before, then know that that's fine. But what we're looking at is ways that we can begin slowly and incrementally building more interactivity. Here's each of the tabs. If you don't know how the single tab is showing, that's called a button set, and you'll have that in the source file to look at that. But the grouping of the content, allowing the learner to pull what they need. Tabs can take a lot of forms. They can be literal tabs like folder tabs. They can be button tabs with buttons. It can be people. You could have 4 characters right here, and each character or those icons that we saw earlier could represent each one of those. Okay, Wesley's independent. That's right. You work with both. That's we want in our toolkit. We want everything in the toolkit.
And look, so James and Kathy both saying it depends on the content. James says, when you use a piece of string, how long should it be? In other words, you choose the length for the job you've got to do. You choose the tab or the graphic according to the job you've got to do.
All right, awesome. And okay, I think that's a very partial and objective explanation. Very good. But sometimes we just find that some strings match more courses, and it's interesting. I'll go a couple more advanced pieces, and then we'll look at some questions here. And one of those is, how do you simulate in a classroom real conversations, right? So a valuable technique that we're doing, and when we're in a classroom, if we're facilitating or discussing, even if it's just a informal learning group, is you're trying to get the learner to apply whatever they've learned, apply what you've discussed. You did a tell version. Now you want them to show or demonstrate some way that they know how to do it. It's not easy to evaluate discussions in e-learning. You can have keywords that you're trying to analyze for, or single or phrases that you look for in quizzes. However, in a lot of adult learning, we don't have to provide that level of scrutiny in the review of the quiz. Instead, what we could do is provide a way for the learner to practice responding, and then give them some suggestions of from an expert. So let them kind of check in with yourself. How do I do? How did I do? One that we informally call this the how do you do? So how do you do? How did I do? How did he do? But it's just a way for you to let the learner practice responding and then checking. And how does that work? Well, we have the text here, right? So we're trying to address fears and give some advice to Ted. Give Ted some advice to help his colleague overcome the fear of technology. And so you have just the discussion here, and then the question is, what would you say? And so what we're using here is, this is really our first time looking at working with variables. This is a text entry field, and this allows the learner to input their response. We're not grading this. I mean, you can, if you're a JavaScript whiz, you could look for all the keywords in there and analyze it, but that's too much. What all we're trying to do is let the learner have a free form way to enter a response, and then after they submit it, we'll let them compare. This is how we show their response. We'll let them compare theirs with that of an expert. So it's allowing them to practice. It's not graded. We're not sending this to the LMS. Not everything has to be tracked and recorded. And let them practice. So let's just see if we can see what this looks like. I'll preview the scene. And remember, the first slide is always the slide that we started with, and that's just, what we brought in from the PowerPoint. This might just be a conversation on the board, and then this instructor goes into the discussion. But here, this is the e-learning version where we're showing a scenario, and you could build this out more visually with characters if you wanted, but essentially the learner could read this, and then what would you do? I would provide, number of examples and research if the person is research driven to support and so on, right? Blah, blah, blah. And so I can type whatever I want. It's not being recorded. Submitting is a terrible term. Just thinking about this as I talk through it, I should have put next or continue, because we're not submitting. This isn't going anywhere. All I'm doing is the variable's capturing this value. And then when I reach the next slide, I see my answer, and then I can tab to see what the expert would do, or what the company would recommend, or maybe it's a series of experts. It's 3 or 4 different opinions, because not everything is black and white, right? Like a leadership approach maybe has a couple good practices for approaching something. But now I can toggle between the 2 answers and kind of get an idea of what the expert or the recommended answers would be. And from there, hopefully, that's what I need to then begin framing my own answers in the real world. I could include a print button and just print this out to take this with me, so that I can just paste it or put it in my wallet, hang it on my cube, or put it somewhere. But I can take those responses, those question and responses with me. A text entry field is very simple. We have plenty of sessions on variables. It's really, you're not even working with variables. Storyline's kind of doing that all for you. But that's another example of what's possible. And one last one, and then we'll pause for any questions here. I want to make sure you kind of interact a little bit with any questions that are outstanding. This one is fresh because we just did a weekly challenge on this one. Maybe if you could find that one, Ginger. I didn't put it in the resource guide because we just did this last week. But it was a way to have a Q&A type discussion. So it's a little similar to what we just looked at. The examples were fantastic. There's a few downloads in there. But essentially, you're allowing learners to practice a series of responses, and then again, they can print out and take with them. Obviously, this would be facilitated, and more feedback would be provided. But just because you're building e-learning doesn't mean that these printouts or these responses couldn't be used then for a later follow-up. Maybe it's for a virtual meeting or a webinar or a Zoom call with the team, and you discuss the answer that you came up with and why they should be correct or incorrect. So a real simple example is we're trying to brainstorm open or closed questions. scenario is we're presenting one for the learner real quick. And for starters, do you like a yellow scheme? How can I reframe this as a more open-ended question? For these types of things, I think a lot of times, even smart people just don't always, if they're not used to the medium of e-learning, or they don't always think of something quickly, I wouldn't prohibit them from moving forward. And I'd also consider adding another, just a little icon or a way to provide a tip with a suggestion. Once I see a suggestion of where you're going with this, especially if it's sort of a new concept to them, they can come up with their own. But I like the idea of just giving a hint or an example, or it could be a prompt. Maybe you're asking them a question, to help prompt them to reach in that right answer. That helps remove that barrier. Excuse me, I need a of thinking this is like a quiz or something that has an on off or good dog bad dog type of grade to it. So a hint, give an example, let them move forward, and then what we can do is, again, this is just how the responses are displayed. They can have a series of their Q&As and how they would reframe it, print that out, send it in, or let's meet and discuss with this at our lunch and learn, and we can use that as a way to begin another discussion of where these would go and what that looks like. But I would highly check out the example. This example here from Jody was really great. I'm going to copy and paste the link because I haven't pasted anything in the chat. This is just one example from that challenge, but you can see a lot of those. All right. So as a starting point, as just a kind of a summary point, think about your content in those three big areas. If you are brand new, I saw a few folks mention that they were just getting started. Get it online. Publish it. Get in that publish field. And don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about what it's interactive. Don't worry about what the next training or LinkedIn article is about why static content is boring. Just get it online, because until you get there, it's hard to really see what's all possible. So publish it to LMS, publish it to Review 360, share it with your group, and if you can, add a quiz and make it trackable. Doesn't have to be a final product, but it gives the team something to respond to too. If they're not used to seeing e-learning, then they can start to kind of grow with you as your skills start growing. I could keep going, but I see it's a little close to the top, so I'll hit pause for a moment, or my mute button, and then grab a sip of water.
No need to hit the mute button, but by all means have the sip of water. You've been doing a great job. People riveted, sitting forward, absolutely. Really finding value in all this great content. Thank you so much, David. Look, there's a whole bunch of questions here. Ginger's been doing a super job of managing the questions. A couple have come up that I don't think got picked up. If I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will tell me. Can we add... look, Cecilia is saying it's been a golden opportunity to learn. Yeah, I agree. Can the answer, to be honest, I lost track of where we were, but can the answer be sent to an LRS, a learning record store, or an LMS? And that was a question from James and from Alex as well. So is it the case that the questions you're setting up, the answers can be moved through to an LMS?
Yep, all of them. And so in the last example that we were doing, we're just using text entry. Those can be sent, or you could use something like the convert to Freeform and then use the text entry, which is a graded question type. So that's actually going to track a lot easier. So that if you're just getting started, start with the text entry Freeform question, which will have that backend capability, and you don't have to use any additional variables to help pass that to your LRS or LMS. But yes, everything we showed here, everything that I've done today, with the exception of the drag and drop, is fully accessible and something that could be accessed through screen readers as well as keyboard navigation. I really should have preferenced that. I think we're working on a drag and drop that's accessible, but right now drag and drop for us is the one interaction type that you need to be careful with.
Okay, that's great to know. Look, a lot of plaudits coming through. People appreciating the huge amount of content you've been able to deliver. We have, excuse me, 2 minutes left. Rather than me trying to find one question at random, which might not be representative, David, what's the most important question you find that people ask you when they're trying to get stuff from a course and put it online? Obviously, you've gone through those 3 steps, which are crucial, but is there any particular, if you like, frequently asked question that you feel we could spend a minute answering just to help people?
So from our perspective, because a lot of our voice here is helping people who don't have e-learning experience. So a lot of the people we talk to, excuse me, is that confidence in what they're doing is not as meaningful, or they're not doing it right. Which kind of goes back to you here. Tom says that a lot. I know Ginger does in her webinars and when we do our workshops. Even when we were at DevLearn last week, it's just, there's this idea that there's the real learning's happening just somewhere else. Yes, or someone else has got the secret to it. If I just had the right storyboard, if I had the right template. I think our industry is better today in the sense that you can see a lot more work than you used to. When I got started, no one showed work unless you signed some kind of contract with some kind of deposit, right? It was, you had to put down a pretty large intent to purchase. The industry's evolving. Everyone's evolving. If I look at the challenge activities that I see today, as opposed to 10 years ago, right there. And these are with a lot of folks who are just getting started. So it is getting better. We're learning more. We're learning what fits better. Rise and some of the micro learning tools are also working really well because courses aren't as big. I just wouldn't worry about that. Our industry's, you don't. Would you have come today if I said how to make a really good text-only course, right? Probably not, because we have no problem making that, right? But I would just say that confidence level of what you're doing and what it means. Your company's hiring you to do it, so they find it valuable, and obviously you're going to grow and you're going to help the company grow as well. But I wouldn't stress over what you think someone else is doing better or worse than you.
I think that's really excellent advice. Generally, things generally progressing. There are huge amounts of content available if you want to improve yourself online in a way that never existed in the past. And we've had people saying in the chat that your LinkedIn lessons have been particularly useful, David. So, and Ginger's been doing a great job dropping some fantastic resources in. Yes, okay, so Sky has said, yes, I've taken some of David's storyline courses in LinkedIn, and they are very helpful. Okay, one final question from Anna. Do you have any single entry point to the interactive possibilities in Articulate? That's quite an interesting and I think good general question to end on. Any single entry point, where would you start?
Tab interaction. Build the tabs. You're going to use slides. You're going to use scenes. We call them the building blocks of eLearning, building blocks of storyline. You're going to use states, layers, and triggers. Everything's contained on a single slide. If you can build the tabs interaction, you are, I'd say you completed day one of storyline training. You want to do day two, learn how to capture the learner's name with a text entry field and display the name on another slide. And now you're doing 80% of what people do with variables. If you can build the tabs interaction that's personalized, you're ahead of anyone who hasn't done any of the basic training. Tabs interactions and text entry to capture learner's name.
Wow. Look, Anna, that was a great question. And what a fantastic answer from David. To the point. Everyone's got to go now. It's lunchtime in Europe. I guess in the US, people are now going to settling down for their first cup of coffee. You're probably going to go back to bed, David, aren't you? What time is it with you?
It's 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Come on. What a fabulous bit of dedication, David. We really appreciate that.
No.
Goodness me.
Well, I think the very first time we did Learning Tech was through you. So it's good to kind of circle back after, I think, 10 years later to do something again. So I'm happy to do it, Donald. I
really appreciate that. David Smith is saying, what? There's a 6 o'clock in the morning? Apparently there is. And David Anderson is no stranger to it. Want to say thank you very much to everyone in the room for your help.
Funny.
Big thank you to Ginger, who did such a great job answering those questions.
Thank you, Ginger.
Making me Ginger. Really easy ride for me. And maybe you can do the job next time Ginger gives a presentation, David. And big thank you also to Chloe in the back end for Learning Technologies and the team here. Right, I'm going to move everybody now. Thank you very much for all your plaudits for David. They are well deserved. I'm going to move everybody now into the sort of lobby area. Say thank you very much, and then we're gonna wrap up. So, David, thank you so much.
Thanks, Donald.